The manuscript was discovered by accident, not in a temple, not in a tomb, but inside the collapsed remains of a forgotten observatory overlooking a barren valley, a place where the wind carried dust older than recorded memory. The valley had no name on modern maps. Satellite images showed it as a blank smear of rock and sediment, a geological scar ignored by every historical expedition for decades. Only ground-penetrating radar revealed the faint outline of foundations buried beneath the surface, too precise to be natural, too symmetrical to be random. The structure itself was small, almost disappointingly so. No towering columns, no ceremonial entrances, just a single rectangular block of fused stone, as if time had pressed the building inward until it became something dense, hardened, resistant to decay. Inside, the air felt stale, still, heavy with the weight of centuries. The chamber had no carvings, no frescoes, no altars, nothing to suggest it was built for worship or for royalty, just four walls. And the floor, half covered in compacted ash and earth, lay a slab of obsidian polished to an unnatural smoothness. Obsidian doesn't erode easily, but the surface here looked untouched, as if sealed away from weather, hands, and time itself. 3 12 hours cold morning, the kind of silence that erases thought and replaces it with instinct. The team brushed away the dust carefully, and beneath it, a sequence emerged. Not language, not art, but something colder, a formula, a long mathematical spiral carved with such precision that even the smallest segment aligned perfectly with astronomical ratios, angles, proportions, frequencies, numbers arranged not to describe the universe, but to measure its collapse. At the outer ring, the carvings felt confident, almost ceremonial. But the deeper the spiral went, the more compressed the lines became, etched with the frantic pressure of hands working against time. At the center, a repeated symbol, a simple mark, but carved so deeply it cut into the stone beneath the obsidian, a warning no one had ever seen. A message no one alive could have written. The lead researcher crouched beside it, her breath fogging in the cold air. "This wasn't created to explain the world," she whispered. "It was created to explain an ending." For decades, historians believed the city that once occupied this valley fell slowly. Famine, drought, political collapse. They were wrong. What lay beneath the dust was not metaphor, not prophecy, not superstition. It was math. A civilization had calculated the year, the season, the day their world would fail, and they carved the answer into stone, not to save themselves, but to warn whoever arrived next. The stone sequence was more than a warning. It was a diagnostic tool, a cold, emotionless blueprint designed to track the life cycle of an entire society. Every line of the spiral corresponded to variables: food distribution, population density, irrigation flow, trade volume, conflict frequency, resource consumption, astronomical cycles, even emotional indicators, fear patterns, ritual attendance, social cohesion. It was as if the civilization had spent centuries studying itself like a patient suffering from a slow disease. Researchers across disciplines tried to decode it. Economists saw early signs of inflation and scarcity. Sociologists recognized repeating cycles in family structures, migrations, and birth rates. Engineers noted symmetrical periods of architectural expansion followed by abrupt stagnation. Climate scientists found correlations with long drought cycles. Every expert saw a fragment of truth, but all of it felt incomplete. Then the mathematician Hale noticed something others missed. The spiral wasn't a record, it was a countdown. The numbers didn't describe events independently. They measured convergence, the moment when unrelated pressures align and collapse becomes inevitable. Civilization, the stone implied, behaves like a stressed structure. It withstands distortion, It absorbs imbalance. It bends under pressure until the stress reaches a point of geometric inevitability. Collapse is not chaos. It is the result of equations tightening around a central point. Every failed harvest, every political fracture, every migration, all of it pulled the spiral inward. The more the city tried to compensate, the faster the spiral compressed. According to the carvings, the civilization didn't just stumble into disaster. They tracked it with painful precision. The formula had predicted their collapse 3 generations before it occurred. Imagine that. People living out their lives knowing their world was mathematically doomed. And still, they continued. They built. They worked. They raised children under a shadow of inevitability until the final cycle arrived and the spiral reached its tightest point. The formula didn't give them salvation, it gave them certainty. And in that certainty, they made a decision so quiet, so calm, so absolute that the world forgot them entirely. Archaeologists found no signs of war, no charred walls, no mass graves, no weapons left behind in desperation. Instead, they found order, homes aligned as if waiting for their owner's return, cooking vessels cleaned and stored, workshops swept, tools arranged by size, gardens pruned as if tended the day before. It was not abandonment, it was preparation. Whatever the people did, they did it deliberately. Some theories suggest a mass migration, but there are no trails, no artifacts, no settlements downstream. Others propose disease, but there are no burial sites. The most unsettling theory is the one supported by the formula itself. They didn't flee, they concluded. They studied the convergence for centuries, watching as variables tightened, as stresses accumulated, as the mathematical noose narrowed around their society. And when the final moment approached, they collectively chose not to endure what came after. The spiral suggests this clearly. The outer rings represent stability, the middle rings represent strain, the inner rings represent inevitability, the center represents cessation, not destruction, but stillness. At the singularity of decline, the formula ends abruptly. No continuation, no attempt to extrapolate beyond collapse. Just a point, a final mark carved deeper than any other, as if the hand that etched it pressed with both resignation and relief. And now, centuries later, the stone rests behind climate-controlled glass, silent but aware, a relic of people who solved the equation of their own extinction and obeyed it. They didn't die out, they opted out. In doing so, they left behind the coldest message imaginable. Collapse is predictable, and it happens the same way every time. When analysts applied the ancient formula to modern civilization, they expected superstition, myth, coincidence. What they found instead was alignment. Population curves matched, resource consumption matched, economic imbalance matched, climatic stress matched, social fragmentation matched, different variables, different era, same geometry. The spiral is tightening again, not catastrophically, but quietly, subtly, mathematically. The convergence predicted by a long-dead civilization is now visible in data models across the world, not as prophecy, but as pattern. A pattern that suggests societies do not collapse when struck by a single disaster, but when overwhelmed by many small ones aligning all at once. The lost city carved this formula because they believed someone, someday, would need it. Someone who lived in a world loud enough to drown out warnings, yet fragile enough to shatter under their weight. Someone like us. And so a final question remains, a question the stone never answered. If a civilization understands the equation of its own end, does that give it the power to change course? Or simply the clarity to watch the spiral tighten? Like, comment, and subscribe for more dark archives.